If I had to name my favorite overseas destination, I would have to say Kenya, East Africa. Search the globe, and you'd have a hard time to find anything that matches the thrill of a safari journey among God's wild and beautiful creatures. We were met at Kenyatta Airport by a local guide carrying a sign, Lewis Group. Dr. Lewis, Jambo. In Swahili, welcome. On our first morning in Nairobi, we enjoyed a delicious buffet breakfast beside the hotel pool. We were staying at the Nairobi Serena Hotel. This hotel had marvelous shops with safari clothing, books, maps, postcards, purses, t-shirts, you name it, they had it. Our people came out dressed in safari outfits. We all gathered beside the beautiful hotel pool for a group picture. After a 5-hour, teeth-rattling drive south of Nairobi, we arrived at our first game park, Amboseli, in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro. Amboseli Game Park was declared a national park only in 1974. It is now one of Kenya's largest and best beloved game parks. We stayed at the best lodge in Amboseli, the Amboseli Serena Lodge. Dr. Claude Cody and his wife Muriel checked out the lodge dining room and came away impressed. The next morning, wearing our safari clothes and armed with cameras, we took off in vans on our morning game run. It was showtime, and we were ready. One of the great experiences in Amboseli was getting to see some great views of Mount Kilimanjaro. We learned that the mountain was the fourth largest mountain in the world, 19,340 feet high. We headed north out of Nairobi. Our destination was the luxurious 5-star hotel and resort, the Mount Kenya Safari Club at Nanyuki. The luxury resort was founded in 1959 by the late movie actor William Holden, which he established as a retreat for himself and his friends. The lodge and grounds straddle the equator. The lodge is located on some 100 acres of beautifully landscaped grounds and is sometimes called the Millionaire's Club. It has 120 rooms and also guest cottages. Our safari vans traveled up a tree-lined dirt road that took us to the entrance of the Mount Kenya Safari Club. There were the elephantine gates that we saw on our first visit here in 1986. Jeanette and I made it back. How lucky can one be? The Mount Kenya staff gave us a royal welcome. We got our room assignments, and we stayed this time in the main lodge. On our previous trip here, Jeanette and I stayed in one of the spacious garden cottages. We followed the staff porter to our elegant room. From our bedroom window, I could see the beautiful green lawns and the blue waters of the club swimming pool. In the distance were the twin snow-covered peaks of Kenya's highest mountain, Mount Kenya. Speaking over my shoulder to Jeanette, I said, "Talk about a room with a view. Wow, this was quite a layout." Not far from the main lodge is the resort swimming pool, located smack on the equator. Jeanette and I donned our swimsuits and jumped into the blue waters for a refreshing swim. All of this on a beautiful sunny afternoon at the foot of Mount Kenya. The staff provided us with golden towels spread out on the green lawn so that we could enjoy the scenery and the colorful sight of peacocks strolling about. After dinner that evening, Jeanette and I explored the lodge and its grounds. Inside the club, over the fireplace mantel, we found a memorial oil painting of the late actor Bill Holden, one of my favorites, the founder of the Mount Kenya Safari Club. The call to rise and shine came over the telephone. Our bags were packed in the back of each van. We did a head count, and all 26 of my Texas group were present and accounted for. Our native guide, Philip, called out to his fellow drivers, "Twindy." I asked him what that word meant, and he replied, "It means, let's go." So we gave a farewell salute to the Mount Kenya Safari Club, and off we went in a cloud of dust, and the Rift Valley and the Masai Mara, Kenya's most exciting game park. We came to a native market on the Rift Road, and the ladies got out their shopping carts and credit cards. The vendors had native animal beads, shelves of necklaces that seemed to shout, "Take me home." Jeanette posed with a Masai woman in her colorful robe, and my kid sister, Tootie, bargained for a native bracelet. These Masai sisters were happy to pose for my National Geographic picture, all natural. Next came a visit to a Masai village. We were welcomed by the village elders, their wives and children. Jambo, welcome. We visited their dung-coated huts and did a flurry of shopping. I pulled out a small sack of balloons that I brought from Texas. I proceeded to blow them up and hand them out to the kids, who held out their hands to get one. They loved it. On our way back to our vans, the ladies of our tour party posed for a group shot. Our driver took a detour to show us the hippo pools. We were advised to follow single file as we followed our guide to the river. He was armed with a rifle as we approached the riverbank and watched as the hippos cavorted about. Lake Nakuru National Park in central Kenya is 96 miles northwest of Nairobi and has what has been described as the greatest bird spectacle on earth. Finally, we arrived at the gateway to Nakuru Park. It was noon, and our drivers went directly to the Sarona Lion Hill Lodge, where lunch awaited us. Our first close-up view of the lake was breathtaking. A lake with a pink fringe of 1 million flamingos. Words fail you as you look at that sparkling blue lake and its pink fringe. We had constant reminders of the movie Out of Africa and remembered scenes of Robert Redford and Meryl Streep as Karen Blixen. We were given an opportunity to visit the Karen Blixen home and museum. It was located just outside Nairobi, where her home is now a museum, located on her coffee plantation in the Ngong Hills. After lunch at the Aberdare Country Club, we transferred to special buses, which took us to the Aberdare National Park for our overnight stay at the Ark. You approach the Ark on a gangway or catwalk. Also near the entrance was a sign saying, "For your own safety, it is forbidden to leave the Ark unescorted." Later, Jeanette and I sat in a comfortable parlor with large sofas. There was a blazing fire in the fireplace, and, above the mantel, a mounted rhino head, a very unique feature that we liked very much. It was cold and misty on the Ark balcony, and many sat behind glass windows to watch the parade of animals down below. Dinner was announced by chimes. Everyone was having a good time. The Ark crew put hot water bottles under our blankets, and we slept snug as a bug in a rug. The Ark was a fun experience. We were looking forward to our arrival at the Masai Mara Game Park. It covers 645 square miles, one of the East Africa's oldest, largest, and most beautiful game preserves. It is actually an extension of the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania. At long last, we arrived at the gates of the Masai Mara Game Park. We had been assured that this is where we would definitely see lions. This was the big one. Wherever you go here, you will see an astounding amount of game, almost 2 million large and small animals. We would be staying at the world-famous Kikarock Lodge, the oldest lodge in the park, built in 1962. It's located in the very heart of the Masai Mara Park, teeming with wild animals, hence the name Kikarock, Abundance. Our driver said, "You'll like the lodge. It is our favorite." The lodge gate was impressive. Beyond the gates, we could see the lodge, sweeping green lawns, and bougainvillea bushes in full bloom. I was a little concerned about the fact that this lodge was unfenced. At 6 a.m. on a cool October morning, we met our balloon group in the Kikarock Lodge for a cup of hot tea or coffee. We got our final instructions and a group photo. That's Jeanette and me and Nancy Guest on the back row. We had paid our balloon fee of $350, and we were ready to go. Driven just a short distance from the lodge, we could see the orange balloons against the sky. The ground crew was ready and gave an occasional blast of hot air as we climbed up into our basket. Soon we were all aboard and ready for takeoff. We were all excited and all smiles. Captain Weiler was at the balloon controls. To my surprise, he told me later that he had once been a pilot for the country western singer Mickey Gilley of Houston. Small world. Our balloon began to rise, and the morning winds took us silently over the Masai Mara. We flew at about 100 feet high. We watched the most beautiful sunrise behind us as we began our balloon safari. After about an hour, our balloon landed. Captain Don asked us to put away our cameras and prepare for landing. Thump, bump, scrape, and we were down on tierra firma. Thank you, Lord. It was a wonderful cruise. Here we have a picture of the three amigos, Dr. Claude Cody, Captain Weiler, and the preacher in his black jacket and hat. When we arrived at our breakfast site, we found that there was a lot of activity at the base of a very tall tree. There were other balloonists seated at 3 low tables, loaded with food and drink, and even vases of flowers. That was a surprise. It proved to be a very delightful occasion and a unique one, the balloon pilots pouring glasses of bubbling champagne. We clinked our glasses all around and shouted, "Cheers!" A happy surprise was seeing my sister Tootie, who had arrived with the ground crew. She came out to help us celebrate our balloon breakfast. After our safari in Kenya, our next destination was Zimbabwe and Victoria Falls. Disembarking the plane, we were whisked by an air-conditioned bus to the famous Victoria Falls Hotel, which first opened in 1904. Following an early lunch there, we were bused directly to the nearby Victoria Falls. We walked single file following our guide to the great waterfall named in honor of Britain's Queen Victoria. While it is neither the highest nor the widest waterfall in the world, it is claimed to be the largest sheet of falling water in the world. The spray from the falls typically rises to a height of over 1,300 feet, and sometimes it is said to be visible from 30 miles away. Victoria Falls is roughly twice as high as Niagara Falls and is rivaled only by South America's Iguazu Falls, which Jeanette and I saw on a previous tour. A lot of people have seen the falls over the years, but by the end of the 1990s, almost 300,000 people were visiting the falls annually. The mist, the rainbows, and the falling water make it a very romantic place. Flying on Singapore Airlines, we flew across the Pacific to Singapore, a long journey of 19 hours, and later on to Nepal and its capital, Kathmandu. We were off the beaten path in this mountain kingdom of the Himalayas. We stayed in a very fashionable deluxe hotel, the Oberoi, and after breakfast the next morning, we took off for a day tour to see some of the very dramatic sights in the city. One of the most dramatic buildings that I've ever seen was the great Stupa of Bodhnath, one of the oldest temples in the world, the largest stupa in Nepal. This temple, the Great Stupa, has drawn Buddhist pilgrims for many centuries, mostly from Tibet. Red, yellow, blue, all-seeing eyes, the temple's prayer wheels, monkeys clamoring around. It was an unforgettable visit. Another highlight of Kathmandu for us was a trip to see the living goddess of Kathmandu. She's often called the Royal Kumari, the Royal Virgin. She is only 6 years old and worshipped by thousands. After a very long wait, we found out that the young goddess was not making an appearance that day. Why, we asked. She's out to lunch, they said. We were in Nepal to see tigers, a beautiful animal, but they're hard to find. We were told that there were some 200 in all Nepal, and about 90 of them live in the Royal Chitwan Park, hunting in the dark and lying in thickets, sleeping during the day. Flying in 2 small planes, our 30-minute flight from Kathmandu took us to a grass landing strip near the lodge. Then we traveled by Land Rover, and then in wooden boats across rivers, and we finally arrived an hour later at the famous jungle lodge, Tiger Tops. We were ready for our game runs and wondering what was in store for us. We had no sooner put down our bags than we were called for the afternoon game run at 4 o'clock. Jeanette and I had on our safari clothes, so we were ready to go. We were excited. Seated on elephant back and wooden howdahs, our legs dangling down the elephant's side, the native elephant boys called mahouts guided their elephants into the grassy terrain. So out we went, out of the lodge grounds, past the lodge, in pursuit of tigers, armed only with cameras. It was fun. We would crash through elephant grass 25 feet high. The elephant, using his trunk and body to barrel through the jungle foliage, was like a tank. It was rock and roll all the way. We had been advised to keep silence as we searched for wild game, and this all added to the suspense. It was exciting to look about and to see tourists on elephant back crashing through tall grass reeds. We were all looking in all directions for any sign of tiger or rhino. A time or two, our mahout would point his wooden rod at a paw indentation in the mud and cry out, "Tiger!" When I heard that, I, for one, was prepared to stand on my elephant's back if a tiger arose suddenly, but disappointingly, we saw no tigers. Tiger tracks, but no tigers. We searched and searched through the tall reeds, and suddenly there was right in front of us a one-horned rhino. It was a mother rhino and her baby. Our elephants surrounded the rhinos in a wide circle. Mama rhino went into a defensive mode and made a charge toward the elephants and us. The elephants trumpeted in alarm and shivered. They began to back off. They say that rhinos have bad eyesight, and they just charge about wildly, which makes them so dangerous. It was a very exciting, interesting, and dangerous experience. Crossing a river on elephant back turned out to be an exciting adventure. At one point during our morning game run, we experienced the elephants making their way down a steep embankment and plunging into the water. In the distance, a mist hung over the mountains. One elephant almost went to his knees, but thank goodness he made it. I was taking snapshots of all this, and you had to be careful, for your camera could just pop right out of your hands due to the elephant's movement. Back at the lodge for breakfast, we were greeted by the friendly staff. Tiger Tops turned out to be a fabulous and fascinating, exotic, fun adventure. Back to Kathmandu and another adventure. We left our hotel at 6:45 in the morning, 12 in number. We climbed into a 35-seater Nikon airplane, and we went flight seeing. We could hardly wait to see the famous Mount Everest. Flying alongside the Himalayas, the pilot told us over the intercom that 19 peaks below were above 18,000 feet in height. In 1995, we did a Baltic cruise aboard the beautiful Crown Odyssey with Dr. and Mrs. Jim Moore as co-host. It was a Scandinavian capital and St. Petersburg cruise. In February 1996, Jeanette and I hosted a 13-day cruise to the Islands of the Sun. And that took in Papeete, Tahiti, Moorea, Bora Bora, Christmas Island, and Hawaii. We stepped off our plane, and there was an airport sign saying Tahiti. Jeanette and I teamed up the next day with Carl and Joanne Miller for a 2-hour cab tour of Tahiti Island. $50 a couple. Not a bad deal, we thought. It was a fun experience, being on our own, seeing lush green foliage, palm trees, red and yellow hibiscus, and glimpses of the sea. There was a splash of color everywhere. On our shore excursion at Bora Bora, we enjoyed a native band and dancers in grass skirts and flowered headdress, doing the hula hula. As Jerry Lee Lewis would say, there was a lot of shaking going on. The native girls were lovely and smiling. Jeanette, my lovely and smiling wife, bought some of their colorful flower leis. The next stop on our South Pacific cruise was Christmas Island. We went ashore by launch. My sister Tootie wore her flowered hat that day with our native driver. Jeanette and the ladies checked out a table of seashells and native jewelry, as native men sat under coconut trees strumming their guitars. We took the shells home for our grandsons Austin and Tyler's show and tell at school. On February 22, 1996, the Pacific Princess anchored at Hawaii's Big Island, Hilo, which has the world's most active volcano. We saw a sign that said, "Welcome to Hawaii, the Aloha State." One of the most fascinating adventures of my life took place in South America, in the Andean mountains of Peru, the land of the Incas. We were going there to see the once lost city of Machu Picchu. Our bus from the airport pulled up at a small square, and there it was, our Cusco hotel, the new and elegant 5-star Hotel Monasterio del Cusco. Flags flapped in the light morning breeze at the hotel entrance. Since Cusco had an elevation of 11,000 feet, the local guide advised us to drink mate tea at breakfast to avoid AMS, acute mountain sickness. The best-known ruin on the outskirts of Cusco is the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, an ancient Inca military complex overlooking the city below. We were very impressed with its massive stone walls, some weighing 125 tons each. How did they do it? All of this without modern equipment. Our cameras were clicking away, aimed at the local people in their colorful native attire, including their knitted caps and hats. The llamas reminded us where we were, Peru. That day tour of Cusco was also the day of the condor for us. Someone yelled, "Look, a condor!" And sure enough, there on a distant rock sat a lone condor, the world's largest bird, with a wingspan of 10 feet. If you were to make a list of the top tourist attractions of the world, you would have to include Machu Picchu. It is an adventure with few rivals, an Andean Shangri-La. The sun was shining brightly over the ruins at our arrival, but before long we had a light sprinkle of rain, and out came the umbrellas. The rain was appropriate because the Incas worshipped water, rainbows, and the sun. Climbing up steep rocky steps, we tourists came to what is probably the most important of all the many shrines at Machu Picchu, the Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. Every major Inca center had one. This one at Machu Picchu is the only one in Peru to escape the Spanish invaders and to survive in its original condition. Jeanette and I roamed all over this lost city, which scholars believe was built, occupied, and abandoned by the Inca king and a population of about 1,000 in the space of less than 100 years. A real highlight for me was climbing up 43 stone steps to the high peak overlooking the ruins for an aerial view. The sun came out in all of its glory. Boy, talk about luck. The view from on high was magnificent. A little girl, seeing my safari hat, asked me if I was Crocodile Dundee. What could I say? I loved it. After a wonderful tour of the ruins, we returned to Cusco by train, did last-minute shopping, bought some artwork, and flew back home to Texas. In October 1997, Jeanette and I hosted a 15-day tour of South Africa. A dozen adventurous Texans signed up. Today, we were off to the top of Table Mountain, a top priority of all who come to Cape Town. There are many walking trails to the top, but you're looking at a 3 or 4 hour climb. Not surprisingly, we preferred taking the 3.5-minute cable car to the top of Table Mountain. We got on board and made our ascent on a bright and sunny day. We had a perfect day. It was 3,489 feet up. After the high tea, we drove 45 minutes outside Cape Town to see the wine country, the vineyards at Stellenbosch. They produce 280 different wines. Then we traveled north in our van to the feather capital of the world, Oudtshoorn, home of South Africa's ostrich farms. Someone called it Big Bird Country. Our tour group was given the opportunity to mount a tethered ostrich for a Kodak moment. Each bird weighs about 300 pounds. So Jeanette and I did that. We sat on top of the ostrich and our pictures were taken. It was a fun stop. You know that ostrich skins are used for expensive shoes and boots and purses. A small ostrich purse in Mount Nelson Hotel in Cape Town costs $650 USA. We visited a Zulu village on our way, and they put on a show for us. There were 2 drum beaters doing their thing, while 2 or 3 native women, bare-breasted, came out holding trays of fruit on their head and doing at first a kind of shuffle and then high kicks in the air. It bore a faint resemblance to me, I thought, of the Rockettes in New York City. We were excited as we entered the gates of Kruger Park, the oldest of the South African game parks. Our river lodge accommodated only 48 people. We fell in love with the camp and felt right at home. Our first evening, we met our young safari ranger, Sean Fairhead, who looked a lot like the actor Mel Gibson. He was there to take us on our evening game run. Before we climbed into our waiting Land Rovers for our evening game run, we were briefed on hours for game runs, meal times, and warned not to leave our cabins after dark because of wild animals and we have no fence. After dinner, it was explained, each night ladies will be escorted to their rooms. Hey, what about us? I wondered. Our young ranger Sean had a rifle mounted on the dash of his Land Rover. Our native spotter tracker was called Kruger. At first we thought it was Trigger, and we laughed later after we got to know him. We love Kruger Park. The tall anthills, elephants, lions, hippos, we saw it all at Kruger Park. In 1990, I led a tour of the Best of Europe and the Passion Play.